Wow, what a difference 24 hours makes. I almost sound like me again on this Wednesday morning, September 4th, 2024. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow over here in Chippewa Falls. Greg Bach is down there in Waukesha. And the show will get started at 6:06 all across the Civic Media Radio Network. And a couple of heavy hitters up today. We've got names for you. How about Mandela Barnes? There's a name. Former Lieutenant Governor is going to join us at 7:06 to talk about. He's got a couple of different roles now. This one is his non-political role, helping connect people, especially homeowners, but others, to all the many sources of funding and resources involved in the Inflation Reduction Act to help you save money by doing home remodels and other projects, and it's good for the climate as well. It's one of those win-win things. And then Jill Underly. There's another name. State Superintendent of Public Instruction. She is our homeroom segment coming up at 7:30, talking about the first days of school here in Wisconsin and a recent visit by the U.S. Secretary of Education, and talk about some prominent issues there. Melissa Baldauff has our climate check at 6:30, where we talk about the disconnect between Republican politicians on climate. They have a very extreme climate denialism position versus Republican voters who aren't nearly that extreme. Plus, Brittany Merlot with the forecast, Todd Allbaugh, and much more. That's coming up in just about 3 minutes. We'll see you then.
across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Wednesday morning, September 4th, 2024. 62 days until Election Day, and it's another beautiful morning to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, the Civic Media app, on demand by podcast, or through our social media video feeds. Nice to have you along. Thank you for starting your day right here. I got a question for you. When did Democrats become the party that's pro-business? Here's the answer. When they realized Republicans were only the party of big business, and what works for them, what works for Wall Street, isn't always, and frankly isn't often, what works for small hometown businesses on Main Street. You start paying attention to them, you do better by the economy. And Kamala Harris has a brand new proposal. We'll hear the vice president's idea and how it ties in very nicely with what the Main Street Alliance has been talking about here in Wisconsin. That's coming up on the program. Also, another question. Do you notice a difference from yesterday? I mean, 24 hours and some more throat coat tea and some more honey lemon lozenges, and apparently shutting up for hours at a time does the trick. So thank you again, everybody, for your indulgence yesterday as I continue to recover from this head cold. Here's what else we have coming up this morning. In this week's Climate Check, we examine the gulf between the extremism of today's right-wing politicians and typical Republican voters when it comes to the climate. The topic of climate change might not be a high priority for everyday voters, but they're not in outright denial like the extremists. And they understand that there are ideas worth pursuing because they're cleaner and they're better for the economy. So we'll talk about that with Melissa Baldauff in a little bit. In our second hour, we've got some very special guests coming up. We will talk to Dr. Jill Underly, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, about the start of the new school year and what is the DPI wish list for students in Wisconsin coming up this year. The U.S. Secretary of Education is in Wisconsin this week as well, so we'll talk to Dr. Underly about that. And we will catch up with former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, whose new group provides a fresh start for homeowners and others who could benefit from the funding being offered through the Inflation Reduction Act to get some beneficial energy improvement projects off the ground. It would save them some money, and it would be good for the climate as well. At any point, if you'd like to join us on the show, 855-75-CIVIC. That's 855-75-CIVIC. You can call the number, or you can text it, or you can use the Civic Media app to call or text us as well. And if you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, put a question or a comment or a hello or a recipe in the comment section, and we'll take a look and maybe pop that up on screen as well. Let's see, we're back to bus stop weather here, so let's check some 6 a.m. temperatures around Civic Media Land. It's 55. It's 55 here on Lake Wissota. It is 60 in Hayward. Park Falls is at 54. Wausau is at 56. Green Bay 54. La Crosse 58. Wisconsin Rapids Wisconsin Rapids, Oshkosh, Madison. I didn't finish. I stopped at La Crosse. And you know why? Because I wanted to talk to Greg so much. Greg Bach popped in right at that moment from Waukesha before I could finish getting the temperatures. So Rapids, Oshkosh, Madison, you're on your own. In Waukesha, Greg's right there, and he can tell us the temperature in beautiful downtown Waukesha is
48 degrees.
48 degrees. There we go. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm, just rocking and rolling, doing my thing. Actually, Pat, I was wrong. It's not 48 degrees. It's 55 degrees.
Yeah, that seemed a little low.
Yeah. Doing well over here, just rocking and rolling. It's early morning. The sun is coming up. It looks kind of clear outside, so that's really nice. And getting ready for another beautiful day of radio.
Another beautiful day of marathon radio as you continue to fill in for Jane Matinaire for the rest of this week as she continues her vacation. Heard Angela Lang on with you. That was yesterday, right? Yes.
Correct.
That was the start of the week. And I mean, she's one of my favorite people that I've never met. Isn't that what Matt Nair always says? It's like, oh, that's my favorite town that I've never been to.
That was Amory.
Yes, from Amory. Angela Lang is my Amory, one of my favorite people I've never met, just from following her on social media and in the news. We've had her on the show a couple of times. She's been wonderful. But when she just gets to, cut it loose with you in the studio, it's just been absolutely delightful. And I know you've had other folks in and out of the studio, but I just had to, mention hearing yesterday's show. And I'm sure you have many more interesting topics and interesting people coming up today as well.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Pat. I do. I have Amy Westrup, who's a friend of mine. She is she's a consultant. She is a comedian. She's just pure business and amazing. She's that person who knows everybody. You're like, hey, I was hanging out with so-and-so. Oh, I know that guy. We went to a conference 10 years ago. I'm like, of course you do. But we're going to be talking today. It's going to be fun. She's going to be my guest co-host all morning long. So that'll be happening 10 a.m. to noon on the Civic Media Radio Network now, of course. And we do miss Jane, and we're looking forward to having her back on Monday.
Yeah. But again, we never begrudge taking time off. For example, yesterday, Greg yelled at me quite justifiably for not taking one more day off to recover, as I probably could have done that. And
you're being very Midwest about it.
I really very, very Gen X, early Gen X. Like, oh no, I love those like TikTok videos and things where it's like, here's somebody from my generation going, yeah, I broke both my legs and I've got a concussion, but I'll be in by noon. And then later on, it's like, I stubbed my toe. I'll see you next week. And I know which end of the spectrum that I'm at, and neither one is really good. We need to do a better job of moderating work versus, self-care. Yeah. And I'll try to do a better job the next time I get infected.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah. Happy to do that. I was not able to stick with the Brewers. I got through 7 innings and they were still tied at 3.
Yeah.
And my phone does give a little ping whenever the score changes in the game. Mm-hmm. And so I recall drifting off to sleep, hearing a little ping going, oh, I'll bet we're winning. And then at some point in the middle of the night, men of my age having to wake up for, various reasons, looked at my phone, realized we'd actually fallen behind in the 11th inning, but tied it back up in the 11th inning, only to lose in the 12th inning, 7-4 to the St. Louis Cardinals. I would not have known. I would not have done well staying up till 12 innings. On that one.
No. I love baseball. I'm not staying up super late for baseball unless it's like a very important playoff game or the World Series. That's just no.
Tony noting on Facebook instead of YouTube. This is interesting. If you'd have taken yesterday off, you'd have never known that cold pizza was the cure to your cold. That does raise an interesting question. I did have the cold pizza right after the show yesterday, and I feel much better today. We've discovered something big.
We did it.
Dr.
Lyerly, put away your medical degree. We are making waves in science that you'll never understand.
Cold pizza cures all. No, it didn't. But so I didn't stay up through 12, but I did want to note that the game was tied after 3. The Cards had scored in the top of the 11th. Willie Adames brought it back to even in the bottom of the 11th with a 2-out double. But then the wheels came off the bus in the 12th. There was a wild pitch. There was a throwing error. It all contributed to the Cardinals' rally. They will play one more time, 6:40 this evening. And that means pregame is at, pull it up on the screen there, Pat. There you go, 6:05 on Civic Media Stations, WRCE in Richland Center, WRJN in Racine, Kenosha, WCQM in Park Falls, and WISS in Oshkosh. So that'll be this evening. The Brewers will have tomorrow off, but they stay home for 3 more games this coming weekend against Colorado. And again, a reminder that Friday evening's game has been moved up 2 hours. First pitch is now at 5:10 on Friday evening to make way for the Green Bay Packers, who open up the season in Brazil this Friday on the Peacock. Not the Hulu, not the Netflix, not the Apple TV, but on the Peacock, which I've got, but now I've got until kickoff to determine whether it's worth signing up for a paid subscription plan or not. So how badly do I want the football season to start this weekend?
Really bad if you're getting Peacock. I mean, how many, I would like to know that. How many networks is it going to be on this season now? I mean, is Peacock just the opening? Is it the special thing, or is it going to be a lot of games? I mean, yeah, it's like we talked about yesterday. It's becoming a frustrating thing, I'm sure, for sports. As a baseball fan, I never know what anything is on, and I don't have any of those stations anyways because most times it's blacked out.
Yeah. I mean, there should be, if you have the rights to something, you should say, okay, you guys can have this, but we're reserving something for ourselves as well, so that if somebody really wants to pay for it, we'll give you one place where you can catch every game for a price, but one place, none of this monkeying around with streaming services, and we'll call it cable. We'll just let you go there.
Or just call it the NFL network. Seriously, just have it all there.
Exactly. Tony noting online, blackouts should be illegal.
Agreed.
Couldn't agree more. Alicia writes in, congratulations, the common cold has been cured for our cold pizza thing. And by the way, I was so discombobulated yesterday. We needed Dan Schaefer in here, but I was so discombobulated. I missed a note on the text line from Lynn in Oconomowoc, so I need to thank her. Probably next hour. I don't know if she's listening this early, but talked about testing positive for COVID a couple of weeks back, and that Dayquil was her saving grace. Chloroseptic spray, lozenges are now a permanent component of her travel kit. But then she also says, hydrogen peroxide is always on my sink for scratchy throat, cuts, bug bites, and stains on clothes. I don't know how I feel about that.
Me either.
So
very confused yet intrigued.
Yeah. I mean, I know hydrogen peroxide is one of those things touted as like it can do anything for everything, but scratchy throats? I don't know. I don't know. And Tony, you're right. Only diehard fans listen at 6:06. Only fans, not anybody that has to be up early for an actual job or something involving, I don't know, milking cows or whatever reason we have to be up as ungodly early as we are. But here we are. Here we are.
Tony with the big words there. All right. He's throwing the gauntlet down.
No, we appreciate it. Hey, there's a lot to cover. Always. There's a lot to unpack in the news. We'll talk about President Biden coming to Wisconsin tomorrow. Now, former President Trump is coming to Wisconsin on Saturday. So much more to cover. But first, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this beautiful Wednesday morning, when you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. Fleetwood Mac's self-titled album is part of today's history lesson. Learn more of the details coming up in about 30 minutes here on Up North News Radio. All right, a lot of ground to cover here in 8 minutes and 45 seconds before we have today's climate change. So let's dive right into it. First off, I saw a new series of polls from swing states around the country. One of them shows Vice President Kamala Harris is up by 6 points in Wisconsin. Free advice. If you ever take a poll and it shows a 6-point difference in a swing state like Wisconsin, start over. There is no way a presidential election is going to have a 6-point margin in this state, in this era. It's not going to happen. If you see that, you did something wrong. Go back and make your sample size bigger or ask some new questions. Don't even put a 6-point poll out there, a 6-point difference in polling among Wisconsin voters. You're not helping your credibility at all. President Biden will be making an official trip to Westby tomorrow in Vernon County, just outside of La Crosse. It is an official trip, not a campaign trip, where he is highlighting Inflation Reduction Act investments at the local level, something we will be talking to former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes about in our next hour. Former President Donald Trump, meanwhile, is coming to Mosinee this Saturday for a rally. Not his first, second, maybe not even his third time at the central Wisconsin airport, where it's very easy to park that jet that other people are paying for and make a speech in a hangar and then hop back on the plane and head out someplace else. There is a story in The Guardian about Tammy Baldwin, about her appeal to rural voters across Wisconsin, the secret of her success. The Wall Street Journal has a similar story about Tammy Baldwin's appeal. Why is she doing so well in polls? Why are there so many, as The Guardian calls it, why are there so many Tammy Trump voters? But there always has been. There have always been people that vote primarily Republican, but Tammy is somebody that gets their vote on the Democratic side. And I think you and I both know the answer. It's because she's willing to work hard and be a good listener. Despite, there's no mistaking that Tammy Baldwin has liberal beliefs and would pursue a liberal agenda. But you do that in a way that, again, isn't my way or the highway. It's you listen to other people's concerns wherever they are, whatever they do. And if they have an idea that makes sense, you pursue it. And that's what Tammy Baldwin has always done. And our friend Hans Breitenmoser is quoted in the article as well from The Guardian, this London-based newspaper. Hans says that Tammy has, quote, never shied from going out into the countryside. I think her message has resonated to an extent because it's not just all BS. She tries to understand the issues and understands the issues at a level that some other politicians don't. And then it kind of goes on to talk about Baldwin's current lead over Eric Hovde in the polls. Eric Hovde has some more new TV commercials out that I noticed on TV here in the Chippewa Valley this morning. And again, they're just so amazingly generic and bland. And you just envision a moderate voter, a Republican-leaning moderate voter, walking up to Eric Hovde and saying, do you have any original thought or idea? Do you do anything that isn't just complaining? You can't just complain about inflation and just complain about the border in a state that's like 2,000 miles from the border. Do you have anything else that's particular to Wisconsin where you're going to help families? And if you don't, then save your money. I feel like there's probably more than a few right-leaning moderate voters saying, look, I would be happy to vote for a Republican alternative to Tammy Baldwin, but you're not providing it at all. Meanwhile, the state's other senator, Republican Ron Johnson, is saying that he supports IVF as long as, somebody else can get stuck with the bill. There's an Associated Press story out there about the number of Republican politicians who are either, depending on your point of view, trying to take a moderate stance on IVF or trying to have it both ways. They're putting their name on bills that would support the concept of fetal personhood, which would, of course, wipe out in vitro fertilization efforts. So they sign their names to those bills, but then they say they're pro-IVF anyway. And in the AP story, Ron Johnson shares his daughter's IVF experience and says he fully supports IVF, but he says he's not completely sold on former President Donald Trump's proposal where he says the government will pay for IVF, will make sure that health insurance pays for IVF. The kind of thing where it sounds like Trump made it up on the spot to make it sound like he's in favor of IVF, even though he's also the guy that brags about overturning Roe v. Wade. And so it's not fully flushed out yet. And Johnson jumps on that and says he's not completely sold on Trump's proposal due to its possible price tag. Johnson says, quote, I would need to see cost estimates, impacts on insurance rates, etc., before making any decisions or commitments to support any proposal. Republican lawmakers, the story says, have historically opposed federal funding to cover health care, including by repeatedly attempting to undo the Obama-era Affordable Care Act, and so they may be unlikely to support other plans that use federal funding to cover health care, including in vitro fertilization. Vice President Kamala Harris has some new ideas that she's going to share today in New Hampshire as the vice president moves beyond the usual swing states, beyond the usual blue wall, to talk about a big new proposal for small businesses. The vice president is going to propose today a tenfold increase in federal tax incentives for small business startup expenses. Right now, the federal tax incentive for small business startup expenses is $5,000. She wants to grow that tenfold to $50,000, hoping that that will spur a record 25 million new small business applications over the next 4 years if she should win the presidency. Now, this would probably require congressional approval, but Congress has to talk about these things anyway because the 2017 Trump tax cuts for the very wealthy are about to expire. And it's going to blow a hole in the budget if Trump wins and again wants to give substantial tax decreases to the very rich and to the biggest companies. Vice President Harris is saying, let's focus on small business. Let's really provide incentive for people to start up their own shop, hang their own shingle, and then hire people. And it is so very much in line with what Democrats are doing around the country for small business, including and especially Tony Evers right here in Wisconsin, who took that Main Street Bounce Back Grant program and said, how about if we give $10,000 in pandemic relief, $10,000 to small businesses who occupy what would otherwise be vacant storefronts on the main streets of Wisconsin's hometowns, and $10,000 grants to 10,000 small businesses, or very nearly 10,000 small businesses. That's how you do it. You don't throw $3 billion at Foxconn and say, gosh, I hope this works out. It's taking care of the small, local, hometown businesses that grow jobs in our local economies. Democrats get that. Republicans continue to be just looking out for Wall Street. We'll have our climate check with Melissa Baldauff. What happens to the Inflation Reduction Act and all those incentives if Republicans were to sweep everything this November? That's next. You're Up North. All right, we're back now at 6:34 on this Wednesday morning. 62 days until the presidential election. What's at stake? The health of our planet, for example, is one of those things, and we check on it every Wednesday in our climate check report with Melissa Baldauff. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Okay, well, good to have you here. Hope you had a good weekend. So let's just jump right into things here, and we're going to talk about there's a disconnect, not a massive one, but a disconnect just the same, that where Republican politicians are when it comes to what seems to be rather extreme views on climate, almost denialism. Well, outright denialism in some cases.
I would say it is denialism.
Yeah, it
I would
is.
say it is.
Yep. That doesn't mean that that's where their voters are, which tells you how extremism can be rewarded in politics sometimes. So before we get back to what Republicans would do if they were to get fully in power in November, let's look at the actual voters themselves. And we get a read on it from the Pew Research Center. Pew has done numerous polls over the years on all kinds of issues. And I guess we'll start with the common ground that not a ton of Republican voters say climate change should be a top priority. And that's unfortunate, Melissa.
I think it is very unfortunate because we know, and we've talked about many times, how climate change impacts so many aspects of our lives. This is something that is it's a quality of life issue because it impacts the environment. It impacts our natural spaces and people's ability to participate in, the kind of leisure activities that we all enjoy and enjoy the outdoors and, hunt and fish and, get out on recreational trails and ski and get out on the water and all those things people enjoy. It impacts our health. We know that air quality and water quality are an issue. It's an economic issue because we have, there's economic threats when we have our farmers and producers whose crops are threatened, whose way of life is threatened, when we have people who are sick from those, air and water quality, issues, and they're missing work. So it's really unfortunate that people don't look at it as, kind of that, that dual track of, yes, the negative impacts are incredibly harmful. And then this, positive way forward creates incredible opportunity for everybody to benefit. There's room in that clean energy economy for everyone to benefit, every community to grow, and for so many communities who have been harmed, including a number of rural communities and folks who have been left behind and felt left behind have that opportunity to grow and thrive and to really see a lot of benefit. So it's very unfortunate that I would say that people have been, I would say, really deceived by people like Donald Trump who are out there calling climate change a hoax.
Yeah, I mean, to look at it, by the numbers, if you look at the general population, about 36% say dealing with global climate change should be a high priority. Among Democrats and left-leaning independents, it's more like 60% say this should be a high priority. When it comes to Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, only 12% say that dealing with global climate change should be a big priority. Now, to put this in perspective, that's pretty much the same as the just 14% of Republicans who say addressing race issues should be a high priority. So we see what they've been fed in terms of a steady stream of messaging from right-wing media. However, when you look at the actual proposals to address climate change, it does turn out that there is Republican support in the general public for doing some of the things that could address climate change. And as we've said several times here, Melissa, it could just be that it's good for the economy, or it just sounds like a good idea, even if climate change isn't a high priority. There are things that the Republican population says, well, these are still good ideas to put in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move into those specific ideas, one other thing I want to point out in that kind of more general overview, you pointed out that the Republicans and Republican leaners only 12% say dealing with climate change is a priority. 84% said strengthening the economy was a priority. Well,
There
dealing
you
with
go.
climate change
Yeah.
is certainly going to strengthen our economy. So then you kind of get into, like you said, these more specific, proposals where we did find a lot of common ground, you see in this polling. And we've talked about this before. And, I'll say it again. This is very similar to what we saw with Obamacare, where it had been, really the concept had been really politicized for them. And overall, they would say, oh, I don't like it. But then when they would hear about those specific provisions, they really liked those. And I think that's a lot of what we see now. Overall, people might say, oh, I don't know about this, whole, clean energy business, this climate change business. But when they hear about things like, you know, planting a trillion trees
Planting
to absorb
trees,
carbon
right.
emissions,
That, look at that one alone. That top one where there's a big match. 91% of Democrats, 87% of Republicans say planting about 1 trillion trees to absorb carbon emissions, that's a good thing, that they think that's a good idea. Same goes for requiring oil and gas companies to seal any methane gas leaks from their wells. 93% of Democrats say, yeah, that's a good idea. 77% of Republicans, it still should be higher, but still, it's something that is there. You get more than a majority, 2/3, in fact, of Republicans say that it would be a good idea to provide a tax credit to businesses for developing carbon capture or carbon storage. And then all the other ideas that come up, they get 50% support or less. But the fact that there are still some things above 50%, Melissa, are at least that's the toehold when it comes to making substantive policy changes next year.
Absolutely. So, I think it is really encouraging to see that there are some areas where there is common ground. But the important distinction is, this is a survey of the population. This is not of Republican elected officials, and this is not of the ones who have the will to get something done. Because we don't always see that the will of the people becomes the law of the land here. Unfortunately, if that were the case, if the will of the people was the law of the land, things would look a lot different in this state and in this country.
Well,
Um,
especially by age, when we're in one of the polling areas that Pew looked at, younger Republicans are far more likely than older ones to say that human activity contributes to climate change. So you are seeing that progress from a generational standpoint. The problem, of course, is that by the time you get more widespread acceptance of what is going on, it's, the clock has been ticking on whether anything you can do might be too late.
Exactly. And one thing I also thought was interesting about this poll is that it does seem that there's this, kind of hesitance among Republicans about growing renewable energy sources, and maybe a little concern about that transition, because they do support expanding some renewable energy sources, but they also support expanding fossil fuels. So it's kind of like, well, we're okay with growing renewables, but we do want to still grow fossil fuels. So it's kind of like we don't want to wean off the one
Yeah.
in favor of the other. But the whole point is we need to phase out the fossil fuels and rapidly grow the renewables. So
No, I
that's
c I can't quit you fossil fuels, seems to be what they're
exactly.
saying.
But there is at least there is the inroad that where in the past we have seen that there had been maybe a little bit of hostility, more concern from some Republicans about solar and wind power, and there was some pretty robust disinformation messaging around some of those technologies. At least we are seeing that opening, that there is support for those. Now we just need to make sure that we can get people to where we want to see that real growth among the renewables and, really wean this country off of the fossil fuels that are what's providing, what's contributing to those dangerous emissions.
But all of that search for common ground could be undone if Republicans were to sweep the White House, the House, and the Senate this November. And these are things that we have talked about before. You would allow more pollution from diesel trucks. You would strip away protections for imperiled species. You would open up more federal lands to oil drilling. The Washington Post quotes one of the Trump administration's former directors at the Bureau of Land Management. They're saying, quote, "To say climate change is the biggest threat to humanity is absolutely insane." That's an actual quote from somebody who was a top Trump aide, which just tells you how wide the gulf is from a politician standpoint and how high the stakes are, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as Donald Trump and Republicans want us to believe that, Project 2025 is not his plan for another term in office. We know that that's what it is. And we've seen what they're talking about. And, what's truly insane here is to think about the continuation of what Donald Trump did previously and the gutting of everything that Joe Biden has done. They believe that what President Biden has done is just to spend a bunch of money solving a problem that doesn't exist. They believe that, all of the investment in clean energy jobs, in, creating opportunities for our schools to make investments for cleaner technology, safer, healthier building spaces that save money on operational costs, that money can be reinvested back into the classrooms, for electric buses for our kids to ride on, to reduce emissions, all of the ways that we are seeing people save money on their energy costs and weatherizing their homes. They think that these are all just a waste of money to address a fake problem. And that's what's insane. They want to undo all this progress. And that's what'll happen.
And in
Donald
fact,
Trump
the guy
is back in office.
The administration official I mentioned earlier, he actually wrote the chapter in Project 2025 about the U.S. Interior Department, and it recommends, again, increasing oil drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and the Arctic wilderness, slashing the fees that fossil fuel companies pay to drill on public land, and provide legal protection for energy companies that unintentionally kill birds, and other wildlife. It is just basically, you could not have written this better if you were in the boardroom of one of these big oil companies, which, again, that's fine. That's their position. But to have that be the position of the federal government on behalf of all Americans, including those Republican Americans that understand that the climate is changing and that while maybe it's not their top priority, it's still a big thing. It just, again, goes to underscore the importance of voting not with, Republican promises of moderation in mind, but what the actual blueprint is that they have put in writing, which would guide a second Trump term. So having explained that gulf between the voter and the politician, Melissa, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
And don't forget, Mandela Barnes will be along in our next hour to talk about home rebates through the Inflation Reduction Act that could lower your utility bills and stop any of your contribution to a changing climate. We'll have today's history lesson coming up next. This is Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. Melissa's here.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello. No, don't be sorry. You're here. That's what counts. All right, here we go. 10 little seconds. Melissa Kaye has got the Beyonce dance. Oh, look at that, Greg. Greg's got it as well.
Woohoo!
Man, oh,
Oh,
man.
Pat, that was a nice little. What was that there?
Do we know how to celebrate Beyonce's birthday or what? Ms. Knowles is 42 years old today, native of Houston, Texas. Previously of Destiny's Child. And look, if Destiny's Child had never broken up, if Beyonce had never gone on to a solo career, she'd still be as big a star. They were going places. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the story behind why she went solo. I'm just saying, Beyonce would be a part of our lives, like it or not. She's a force.
Mm-hmm. I had a feeling that Destiny's Child was a stepping stone for her, and all of the members were told, look, you're great.
You're great, but let me introduce you to the Supremes over here without Diana Ross.
To my daughter, she's going to be the one who's the star.
Yep.
Good job.
Thanks anyway. Melissa Kaye joins us from locally grown radio WFHR Wisconsin Rapids. How are you?
Good morning. Glad to be here. Barely made it.
Yeah. You have a good holiday weekend?
No.
Oh, no.
I mean, yes, but
wow.
no.
Well, no. We spent all day yesterday talking about my miserable weekend being sick. So since misery loves company, go on.
No, I did get to go visit with my girlfriends from high school down in Madison, so that was good.
Okay.
The rest of it just got usurped by things that I didn't plan for and didn't want to do. So,
yeah.
Life. Yep. Have fun.
Life. Yeah, it happens. It shouldn't happen on a holiday weekend, but
I still didn't get my shed scraped, Greg. You didn't show up with your paint scraper.
Oh, no, he didn't.
That's a very weird sentence to say.
And he was.
Okay.
And by the way, just to be clear, he was never going to.
I know.
But we have wish.
One can always remain hopeful.
I know that.
If I show up to your house today and be like, I'm here to scrape your shed.
The shed is right there.
Okay, that normally gets a call to the cops at this point, going, there's a man at my door with a scraper saying, I'm here to do a number on your shed. Like, no. We're calling the sheriff's department. To the history books now. On this day in 1957, the governor of Arkansas called out the National Guard to prevent 9 African-American students from enrolling in Little Rock Central High School. Before long, President Eisenhower would federalize the Arkansas National Guard and order it to protect the students and allow them to enter back in 1957. All right, let's do the number one album and the number one single from this day in 1976, starting with the number one album, the self-titled album from Fleetwood Mac.
That intro.
That's what I was going to say. Is that there's several different songs in today's. That Single Ladies was one of them. Rihanna here is another one. You're going to know it right away. So anyway, the album had been out for nearly a year, but reached number one on this day in 1976 with other hits like Over My Head and Say You Love Me. And we'll hear a little bit more from this album coming up this morning. On this day in 1951, Frank Sinatra played Las Vegas for the first time, performing at the Desert Inn Hotel and Casino. By 1959, he is the city's top draw. And wouldn't it be fun just to see the photos of what the Vegas Strip looked like in 1951? When it basically looked like something out of a Roadrunner cartoon,
Yep.
Right. So much crammed into one street and then nothing outside of it.
Yeah, nothing whatsoever.
I saw a picture that advertised the real estate that was to become Las Vegas for sale, I think in like the 20s or something, for like $3 million.
Yeah.
Desert.
Yep. Well, you know what? That paid off pretty well.
Yeah.
That was the gamble that worked for some. Yes, exactly, for some. Back to 1976, the number one song this day was by the Bee Gees. See, I told you. Iconic intros today. So what you should know is that this song was not created for the soundtrack of Saturday Night Fever. That movie wouldn't come out for almost another year. And the makers of the movie putting together the soundtrack said that one needs to be in here. And it did pretty good. On this day in 1971, a little bit of music history, there was this Bruce Springsteen show going on in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And it's really when the E Street Band came together, because there was this saxophone player named Clarence Clemens who joined the band on stage for the first time. And can you just imagine that moment, where Clarence comes on and plays and jams with the band, and you can see the rest of the band looking at each other going, yep, this is it. This is the one. It reminds me of, Greg and I love to talk about Michael McDonald. And the first time that Michael McDonald came in for the Doobie Brothers, and like as soon as they heard what came out of his mouth, the rest of the band was like, yep, you're in. That's it. Yep. Welcome. It was kind of like, Melissa was the same. Melissa did not even fill out a job application. She walked in with this effervescent personality. They're like, you're our Clarence Clemens. You're in.
Kinda.
See?
There you go.
The number one song this day in 1982 was by the Steve Miller Band. Again, intros. You play Name That Tune with these songs, you're gonna I can name this in one note.
Can I tell a fun story real quick about my mom and Steve Miller in this song?
Sure.
She made herself a cassette of all of her favorite Steve Miller songs. Yeah. And on side A were like, the 70s, all the 70s songs we all know and love. And then side 2 is just Abracadabra on repeat.
I love your mom.
That's great. On this day in 1888, George Eastman registered the name Kodak as a trademark and got a patent for his camera that used rolls of film this day in 1888. And a little TV history. It was on this day in 2002 that Kelly Clarkson and Justin Guarini were the finalists in the first ever season of American Idol. Here's how it ended.
The winner of American Idol 2002 is...
Of course, it's a reality show, so we have to wait.
Drama.
Yeah. Come on. And
we're going to cheer no matter what.
Oh, yeah, but that worked out pretty well for her, too. Okay, Melissa, so nice to see you here. Anything we need to know that you're working on really quick?
Just working hard behind the scenes, still trying to get my show off the I don't know, it's haunches. We're getting there. Still squatting, but we're making progress.
Good luck with that. Good luck, Melissa. We love her. All right, you have a great day. Much more Mandela Barnes, Jill Underly in the second hour of Up North News Radio next on the Civic Media Radio Network. Oh, Melissa, you're too much.
Oh, have a good day, guys. You sound better today, Pat.
I'm getting there. So you get up off those haunches and we'll talk to you later.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Mandela, good morning.
Hey, man, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Really good, really good. What about you?
All right, good.
Never mind.
That's all right. Nope, you sound good. We're going to see you on camera for the interview?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'm
All
just
right.
doing.
Yep, no worries. That's fine. Just wanted to make sure so I could make a nice little video post for social media later. Let's see. Bring Brittany in here, too. Hey, Brittany, how are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. All right, looks like I got everything else good to go. There you go. Looking good, man. All right, I'm going to stick you back in the waiting room, Mandela, and I'll bring you back out when Brittany's wrapping up her weather.
Sounds
Talk
good.
to you in a bit.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Good morning and welcome back to Up North News Radio. Unabashedly Wisconsin, brought to you by Courier Newsroom and carried by our friends here on the Civic Media Radio Network. 7:06 right now on this Wednesday morning, September 4th. Nice to have you along, a big hour ahead. Former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is standing by, is going to tell us about one of the projects he's working on, which is a groundbreaking role in terms of putting the Inflation Reduction Act into motion in hometowns all across the country, especially here in Wisconsin, ways that folks can save a lot of money in the future and do good things for the climate as well. So we'll have that conversation with Mandela Barnes in a bit. Then later this hour, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Jill Underly will be here. She has been visiting with the national U.S. Education Secretary as part of a start of the school year trip through the country. And so we'll talk about what kinds of issues the Department of Public Instruction is following as we get going on the school year. Todd Allbaugh will be along to preview what's coming up on his show at noon later today across the Civic Media Radio Network. But first, of course, we bring in meteorologist Brittany Merlot to tell us a bit more about what's happening weather-wise, which at the bus stop this morning includes 55 here in Chippewa Falls, 59 in Hayward, 53 in Park Falls, 53 in Wausau, and in Green Bay. La Crosse at 55, Wisconsin Rapids 53, Oshkosh 53, Madison 53, and the cool spot across Civic Media Land is where Greg is. It's 48 degrees because he's cool that way. Brittany, good morning. How are you? Can you explain Greg's coolness and then give us the forecast for the rest of this Wednesday?
Well, I think that's just Greg radiating. It's the reason why
He
they're
radiates
getting attention
coolness.
right now. Yeah.
I like that. He's like the opposite of a heat pump that we're going to talk to Mandela Barnes about in just a bit here. So
I don't know how to handle that.
there is no transition from that joke. I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Brittany. Tell us more.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So we have a beautiful day ahead of us. Of course, the high pressure is still in control. Gorgeous sunshine out there today. It's going to be warm. Temperatures are going to climb to those upper 70s, maybe a few 80s out there. A little breezy throughout the afternoon and nothing to worry about. Tomorrow is the big transition day where if you live up north, highs are only going to be in the upper 60s to low 70s. And the further south in the state you are, you'll have one last day tapping the low 80s. But a cold front will be passing through, so some spotty showers moving in overnight tonight into northwest portions of the state. And of course, that cold front working its way throughout the state tomorrow. We're going to see some scattered showers, maybe a few rumbles of thunder, and a little bit of rain there. So after that kicks out, the cooler air settles in. It's going to be a fall-like vibe. Highs on Friday, only in the 60s. It's the same story for Saturday as well before we warm things up again.
There we go. Now we've got autumnal vibes working our way into the States. All right. Let's see from Mary. She says, good morning on Facebook. Rob from Tigerton wishes Melissa a super Wednesday. And for you, good morning from Tigerton. Sunny, 50 degrees. Last night's sunset and this morning's sunrise were fantastic from the wildfire smoke. I mowed 6 yards in the Wittenberg and Tigerton area, and that many today. Weather is perfect, and Brittany has been hitting them out of the park with the weather lately. Pat, you sound much better today. Glad you're getting better. Have a super day. So there you go, Brittany, knocking them out of the park.
I love it. And he brought up a good point, the wildfire smoke. I forgot about that haze yesterday. We could still see that once again today.
We were in, Saskatchewan last weekend, and the first thing we said to our Canadian hosts is, why are you burning your country down? And a lot of those are they're so far up north, and some of them burn all winter long. They just kind of smolder under the surface and then fire back up, no pun intended, because they're in such remote areas. Not a great situation, but yeah, makes those sunsets awfully pretty around here. So
It sure does.
we'll take that aspect of it at least. Brittany, thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
Always nice to hear from Brittany Merlot as well. All right, let's look ahead now. We know that President Joe Biden is going to be coming to Wisconsin, to the Westby area. It's an official presidential trip where he talks about things that he has accomplished and achieved over the past 4 years as part of the Biden-Harris administration. And a real linchpin of that has been the Inflation Reduction Act. And he's going to be talking about the aspects of it and putting it to work in local communities across the country, and of course, particularly in Wisconsin. All of that assistance in things that are good for the climate, the things that are good for Americans' pocketbooks, their homes, their vehicles, everything else, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens with people that are connecting homeowners, small businesses, school districts with the resources that are available from the Inflation Reduction Act. And Mandela Barnes, the former lieutenant governor of the state of Wisconsin, plays a role in that as well, where he works with a group called Forward Together Wisconsin to help connect people to those resources. And Mandela Barnes joins us this morning. Mandela, good morning. Good to see you. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here. Yeah, it's always a good day when we can talk IRA, talk about ways to save people money, and talk about making sure that we are doing everything we can to promote sustainability across the state and across the country. We have an opportunity like never before to get it done.
It is. I mean, a lot of folks were familiar with the bipartisan infrastructure law. Folks get that kind of infrastructure, the roads and the bridges and everything else that goes along with it. This is more about the infrastructure of household life, houses, cars, appliances, things like that. And in both cases, Mandela, these are basically overdue. These are overdue investments that the country can make where it costs some money up front, but provides such savings and benefits in the long run.
But not just household life, daily life in general. It is your household for sure. And that's where most Americans are going to see the biggest savings, but also the workplace, school buildings, public spaces, all of these things, all of these institutions, all of these structures, we have an opportunity to green them, so to say. I mean, I guess that was the terms that people use a while ago. Some people still use them, but to make them more sustainable, to make them more habitable, to prep them for the future is the way I like to explain it. Because when we talk about things in the context of what is coming our way, whether it is climate change and how we're going to deal with it, whether it is that astronomical utility bill that is on the way, especially as it takes a whole lot to heat up our homes in the wintertime, how can we offset some of that? How can we save a little cash, save the planet in the meantime? And there was this opportunity like never before with the Inflation Reduction Act. The problem is, as you mentioned, people knew about the bipartisan infrastructure law. But there was certainly less knowledge about the Inflation Reduction Act and how it can help folks. And so there was a chance, and I was presented with this opportunity to help stand up an organization to be a bridge between individuals, to be a bridge between communities in the Inflation Reduction Act, to make sure that it was successfully implemented in Wisconsin. And given the fact that we're the first state with the home energy rebate program, I think we're well on our way to successful implementation. We still got a long way to go to make sure everybody knows about it. And I like to say that our goal is to make sustainable attainable. Too many times or too often, the cost is out of reach for somebody to go solar, or the cost could be even out of reach for a household to get an energy assessment or insulation work that will save them money in the long run. And if we continue with these inequities, we'll have higher income households paying lower energy costs and lower income households paying higher energy costs, which just isn't fair. And that's not the intended purpose of the IRA. So putting the IRA to work for working families is certainly a goal of Forward Together Wisconsin. I'm proud of the work of our team.
And so the group is helping with Wisconsin becoming the first state in the country to launch this program called Home Efficiency Rebates, or HOMES for short. The Home Efficiency Rebates program provides these rebates for installing new appliances, insulation, heat sealing, ventilation. The U.S. Department of Energy says that doing these things could save American households up to $1 billion a year in energy costs. And of course, at the same time, Mandela, then we stop contributing as much to the problem of a changing climate.
Exactly. There's the energy cost. There's also the tax credits. There's also the new job creation. There's the local investment, almost $1 billion in local investment, and almost 2,000 new clean energy jobs in Wisconsin. But there's data from the IRS that shows that more than 73,000 families have already benefited from the more than $91 million in tax credits to lower the cost of energy and upgrading their homes to make them more sustainable. And the IRA includes more than $8 billion in home energy rebates altogether to help people across this country make their homes more energy efficient. And again, this is what saves the people the money while reducing the emissions.
We're talking to Mandela Barnes, former lieutenant governor, and we mentioned that President Joe Biden will be coming to the area to talk about this. And we were discussing in our last hour with Melissa Baldauff in our weekly climate check feature about what would happen come November. And now, again, the role that you're playing in this, connecting people with rebates, this is a non-political role. But as we were having the political discussion in the last hour, we know that by and large, the goal of people, on the Republican side, much like the Affordable Care Act, is simply to take all of it away, which, Mandela, I don't think it's a political argument to say that sounds rather extreme, to go from doing a whole lot about climate change to being in complete denial about it. We talked about how with Republican voters, maybe it's not their highest issue, but they're not in complete denial about it. And it would seem pretty apparent to me that if you're going from a lot of assistance to zero assistance, that's something that would not necessarily be beneficial to the climate, but also to the American economy.
And, not to be political about it, but if you want to stop people from saving money, then that's on you, not me. And I don't mean you, Pat Kreitlow. Right. I mean those who are trying to do that, who are trying to stop people in the state of Wisconsin or people in the country from tapping into cost-saving measures, to stop people from tapping into tax incentives that help them put more money either into their own households or money back into the economy. It's a very odd strategy, in my opinion. Who doesn't want to pay lower cost energy bills, and who wouldn't want to tap in some of those savings? And it's funny, the folks who are always talking about lower taxes, well, why would you go against a tax break for working families? And when they say it's tax breaks that they're after, it's, again, too often for the wealthiest among us. I think that working people, I think that lower income individuals, I think people who are still looking for work deserve an opportunity and a chance to participate in this economy just like anybody else, because it makes us all stronger. It gives us all better opportunity at success in the future.
We're talking to former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, who's now working with a group, Forward Together Wisconsin. You can learn more at forwardtogetherwi.org. We're going to continue that conversation in less than 2 minutes here, but first a quick update that the Brewers lost in 12 innings to the St. Louis Cardinals 7-4. They will play the final game of that series coming up this evening, including on stations across the Civic Media Radio Network. More with Mandela Barnes next. You're Up North. All right, this is a quick 1 minute break, and then we'll have the second half of things here. Anything I haven't hit yet, or references that you want to make sure we touch on, or are we doing okay?
I don't think so. I think we're doing good.
Okay. All right, good. We'll got that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, good. Is it okay if at the very end we say you are, this is your non-political thing, but you are working in something for voter turnout, and we're going to talk about that in a few weeks? Okay. Yep. I want to make sure I let people know that we're aware of that. Okay. Good. Then we're set, and we'll get going here in about 20 seconds.
Okay.
May the last one burn into flames. Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. Yeah. Freedom, freedom, where are you? 'Cause I need freedom too. I break chains up on myself. Won't let my freedom rot in hell. Hey, I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
Happy birthday to Beyonce, 42 years old today. Let's continue our conversation with former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. The man is trying to get something done here that's useful and utilitarian and non-political, connecting people to the resources through the Inflation Reduction Act that can help them save money on utility bills, increase the value of their homes, be good to the climate. And yet the poor man, having been a former lieutenant governor, can't help getting peppered with political questions from idiot political reporters like me. Mandela, I have to ask it this way, because we're still seeing arguments being put forth, including by folks at the Badger Institute, that say that things like the Inflation Reduction Act, would be wasteful spending. We are hearing about how, there could actually be higher costs for homeowners, especially when it comes to heat pumps. We hear about, they're coming to get your stove, or they're coming to take your car away, or whatever the case might be. And Mandela, it didn't take me 5 minutes to find out that a lot of this mythology on heat pumps and working in cold climates, those are talking points that are easy to spread, and there aren't nearly enough people, you and your allies, to get out there and knock it down and talk about the changes in technology, the improvements in heat pumps that make these kind of investments affordable and practical, even in Wisconsin.
Well, the problem is the people, the detractors, those who are trying to cast aspersion on heat pumps are people who are too concerned with living in the past. And again, not to make this too political, but it's typically the same crowd that want us to be subject to our 1849 criminal abortion ban. So these folks are one and the same, but this is, all of it is shameful. But the fact is, they're using outdated metrics, they're using outdated data. Heat pumps are fully electric. They can run on a grid, they can run on battery storage, and also manufacturers are making heat pumps to be more efficient in cold climates, like in Wisconsin. And folks who have heat pumps here have seen them weather some really cold days. And so all the talk about what will and what won't work, we know that the traditional forms of generating energy just are not working for America. Those jobs are dying off, and the planet is dying off right alongside those jobs. And we have to think about what the next 10 years, what the next 20 years, what the next 50, 100 years are going to look like. And unless we do that, we're going to be trapped inside of this cycle where we are trying to get our carbon emissions down to get us below that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. But there are some folks, for whatever reason, don't take that seriously. They've ignored science on so many other issues. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that they're ignoring the science on climate and energy production. But I do truly believe that the mass of people, the majority of people understand not just what's at stake, but understand what they have an opportunity to embrace, and they want to move forward. And that's why you see a number of, it's a small group still, but you see a number of conservatives who are starting to embrace new technologies, and we welcome them. And this work that we're doing is nonpartisan. One person I know in particular, a former guy I served with in the state assembly, Jeff Stone, he's been working with Renew Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken, to try to help implement some of these measures. And I guess I still owe him a phone call, but we want to see more of this, right? Like, I don't want this to be a political battle. It shouldn't be a political battle. It shouldn't be a partisan fight. This should be about doing the right thing, just as so many other issues are. But when it comes to saving people money and making sure that our children in this country have a future they can look forward to, that should be something that we wholly embrace as one.
Yeah, and let's make sure that folks understand a guy like me advocating this stuff doesn't mean that there are blinders on. Technology is always improving. It's not perfect yet. The difference between buying an EV, if you're using it just in an urban area where there are plenty of charging stations, versus if you're making a lot of 500-mile road trips, Maybe that's not the right thing for you yet, but nobody's coming to take away your car and make you get an EV. This is something that is constantly evolving. So in terms of the technology available today, the projects that can be done today, let's kind of go through the practical process. People are hearing you. They're going to websites like focusonenergy.com or forwardtogetherwi.org and wanting to learn more. What are some of the first steps that they can make to learn more about whether and how these kinds of programs are right for them?
Yep. So at forwardtogetherwi.org, there is a link to a savings calculator with our friends at Rewiring America. A lot of weird syllables here. But there is a link to Rewiring America where folks can first put in their income, put in their address, and then you'll be served with a menu of options of what you have access to. This could include heat pumps. This could, most likely it will certainly include the insulation work, the energy assessment, but also, whether there are options for solar, how much you can save there, heat pump generation, how much money you can save there, and other options depending on where you live.
There's also, as people go through that process, you learn that not only is there a benefit in terms of, saving you money down the road, getting some support up front to pay for big projects like this, but there's also job creation, not just in the manufacturing of these items, heat pumps and, electric appliances and solar panels and everything, but the employment that comes in installation as well. I mean, there are going to be work crews busy around this state for the next decade, the next generation.
There is going to be so much job creation, so much opportunity. And I guess that's the silver lining about us being so late to the game here, is that there is so much work to be done just for us to play catch up, just for us to get close to the clean energy goals. And when I served as chair of the Climate Change Task Force, we put out our list of recommendations. But shortly after that, Wisconsin finally got our clean energy plan approved. And so there's our plan to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And that was before the IRA. So with the help of the Inflation Reduction Act, that certainly gives us the tools to accelerate our clean energy goals, and also helps us to be realistic about what's achievable, because at that point we assumed zero help from the federal government. This was all what the state could lift on its own, realistically, partnering with organizations, getting utility companies in line and on board with the goals. And I just want to give a shout out to the utility companies that were on board. There were a couple who actually had clean energy goals before the state had clean energy goals. And that was before our administration came into office in 2019. But with that being said, because Wisconsin had been super slow to adopt, because we've been stagnant for 8 years, there's just a wealth of opportunities and job opportunities specifically for people to get us back up to par.
And for folks hearing this going, this all sounds wonderful, but does this really mean Mandela Barnes isn't engaging in, political activity anymore? We're going to have him back on, because there's other things that the man does to fill his day, including voter turnout. We're going to talk about that in a few weeks here, I gather.
Oh, I'm happy to talk to you about it in a few weeks.
All right.
We'll talk about it whenever, but I look forward to coming back on.
Yeah, and hear all about the ways that we're encouraging people to vote coming up in November. Mandela Barnes, for the update on the rebate program and everything else about the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you so much. We'll touch base on election matter again real soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. When we come back, Dr. Jill Underly is standing by, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, as we get started on a new school year across Wisconsin. From the Civic Media Radio Network, this is Up North News Radio. Back in just a bit. All right, we are clear. Thanks, Mandela.
Of course. Thank you. See you soon.
All right. See ya. Bye now. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in a hotel room.
Okay.
So
Tell me where you're at in terms of, did the U.S. Education Secretary already do their tour through Wisconsin, or are you in the middle of that?
he's finishing up this morning. So I'm going to meet him again this morning after this interview.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
we'll start with that, and then we'll get into some of the other issues for the start of the school year.
Yeah.
Anything you want to make sure that I don't forget to hit?
No, I think we'll, have a good conversation.
Oh yeah, we've got a nice list to work off of here. So I just didn't want to miss anything that was obvious or high priority. So this is one of our longer breaks. We've got 4 minutes until we come back. So I'm going to tuck you back into the waiting room so you can make as much noise as you want, and I'll come get you at the end of the commercial break.
All right. Thanks so much,
All right,
Pat.
thanks. Tomorrow on the program, the federal government is trying to do more to encourage Americans to learn about voting, register to vote, and go out and vote. Republican Congressman Brian Stile thinks there's something nefarious about that and wants to investigate. We'll tell you more about his efforts tomorrow on Up North News Radio. Remember, you can sign up for our daily newsletter. Head over to upnorthnewswi.com. Click subscribe in the banner on top of our homepage and sign up for Unabashedly Wisconsin News delivered early every weekday morning. The U.S. Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, is on a bus trip to several states, starting in Wisconsin, part of a back-to-school bus tour to talk about the many ways that schools and families and communities can do more to help with student achievement and raise the bar in public education. The bus tour includes work and visits with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Jill Underly, who joins us now on Up North News Radio. Dr. Underly, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for being a part of this. So we understand that Education Secretary Cardona is in Wisconsin, ready to do that part of his national bus tour. What more can you tell us about what you all are talking about as you get started on a new school year?
Yeah, no, this has been a really great event that he's doing, and he did it a couple of years ago around career and technical education and made a couple stops here in Wisconsin. But this one in particular is about fighting for public education in public schools. And so the secretary is raising the alarm that if we don't fight for our public schools, then they will be taken over by privatization, or our schools will continue to be defunded and negatively perceived to the point where they can no longer exist because of declining funding and enrollment. So his argument, as well as mine, has been that these are places that are the centers of our communities, and they are worth fighting for because they're the places that only everyone is welcome. Doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, who your parents are, or how much money you have a place in your public schools and you belong there. So I just really like the message that he's promoting, and there's so much energy around his tour.
And unfortunately, everything that you just said is at the heart of either Republican criticism or conservative efforts to privatize public education, with this drumbeat message of that it should just be the 3 R's and just focus on, teaching. It's just notes on a blackboard, when, as you said, schools are so much more. And while some people may not like some of the discussion topics, these are some of the safest places for our kids to have discussions or to find resources or to just get a friendly ear to talk to. And those problems don't go away when you privatize and take schools just down to reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today without my public school. And I think about my public school experience, the exposure that I had, to other kids and other cultures, and how it prepared me to be the person that I am today, and how I loved my teachers and how they loved me back and how they believed in me. And it was the place where my parents could send me because it was in my community. And I think that's, part of the point. Public schools are an act of love, that love that our community invests into its next generation. And it's one of the greatest gifts that we have in our society. And to that point, yesterday we were in Wisconsin Heights, which is a rural school west of Madison in western Dane County. It's consolidated Mazomanie and Black Earth, Wisconsin. And the secretary talked with teachers and superintendents who created a Grow Your Own scholarship opportunity for high school students who wanted to become teachers and then come back and work in their rural school. So that's really what it's about. It's about investing in that next generation. It's about investing in your community. And we talk all the time about how public schools are this cornerstone of democracy. It's a local government, right? There's a local school board. And we have to remember that everybody in that community, that school belongs to them. And it doesn't matter, again, what language you speak or who your parents were or any of that stuff. I mean, that's your school, and we have to make those schools work for all kids.
When a lot of parents are getting ready for the new school year, they maybe have to go to the store nearby to get school supplies and maybe some new clothing. You end up going all over the state. You were recently in the Fox Valley talking about how to teach students who are speaking different languages. What was that tour about?
Yeah, so we were in Green Bay area, and we had a great visit. we were also in Menasha, and in both cases, I mean, the administration and staff were wonderful. We visited dual language classrooms, and these classrooms, they're doing great things, and especially around language immersion. I mean, these kids are building incredible skills, and then when they go through school, they're going to have multiple languages, and that's an asset. I mean, there's so much research that shows that children who learn 2 languages in elementary school will have better literacy scores, because they have different cognitive advantages when they learn multiple languages. And this is, again, a service to the community. You have parents who maybe don't speak English, and we have, them trusting the public schools with their kids, and then the public schools accommodating that. We also visited Fenimore out in, I think it's Grant County. It's, west of Dodgeville there. And they also have Spanish-speaking students. And it's a rural school district, and they are using the assets of their kids who speak, Spanish from the time they were little, learned English. And these are now high school kids who are providing translation services in their communities. And so bilingualism is an incredible asset, and we have to embrace that. And again, these classrooms, or the dual immersion classrooms, those children tend to do better academically than students in traditional classrooms, especially in reading. I mean, those skills are transferable. So children who learn both languages and learn to read and write in both languages, they're going to develop stronger literacy skills. And it's just something that we haven't fully embraced, in our entire system. And it's really a shame. We really need to do that.
And it really is affirmation of the way that your local public school is sometimes also your best job recruiter of the future. You just talked about how some of these students go on to become translators or interpreters. And earlier you mentioned how some of them will come back to their community to teach. Our reporter Selena Heller did an in-depth story a couple months back out of Black River Falls, and how many students who left town, never thought they were going to come back, but then felt the call to serve and come teach back in their hometown school. If you're weakening your hometown schools, you're weakening some of that future job recruitment for your local economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just an aside, when I was a superintendent in Southwest Wisconsin, and it was a rural school district, I would count, how many of our teachers were from that community. And it was something like 60 to 75% of our teachers any given year had either graduated from that school district or graduated from one of the adjacent school districts. And rural schools employ people from their communities. They choose to be there. They choose to live in that rural area, and they are firmly connected to those communities. And so like this program that we saw yesterday at Wisconsin Heights, the GROW program, it's something the secretary would like to scale up in other districts and other states. And I'm 100% with them on that, just to be able to make sure that our school districts in Wisconsin could have programs like that as well.
Dr. Jill Underly is the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and is joining us on Up North News Radio on this Wednesday morning. There was a recent release of the Wisconsin Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and it confirmed that there's a mental health crisis, among youth in our country and in our state. And while the COVID pandemic is increasingly in the rearview mirror, the mental health crisis was here before that. And it continues. It doesn't fade just because the pandemic has appeared to fade, and it continues to be as much a challenge for local districts and I would imagine for a state Department of Public Instruction as well. What kinds of things are you studying? What kinds of things are you trying to put in place at the start of a new school year to address these very real concerns?
Yeah, mental health is still a very, very big concern, especially after our latest YRBS, which is that Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and the results that showed that 60% of our kids are struggling with a mental health concern. So it's depression, it's anxiety, it's suicidal thoughts. And these concerns are largest for our girls and girls of color, especially, as well as our kids who are LGBTQ plus students. We did put something in our budget last time, and we're gonna promote it again. But the data shows that we still need to invest more into our public schools with mental health. There are a lot of places, mostly rural, that still struggle with attracting staff, to work in mental health. But how can we also pay for staff? It's a both and. We may have the money, but then we can't find the staff. And then we may have the staff, but then we can't find the money. And the kids are in our schools. So how do we get the services to the kids, so that families don't have to drive? You think about rural areas, and sometimes families are having, to choose between working and taking their kid to an appointment, or kids are missing lots of school because of appointments being far away. And so it's one of our highest priorities because the need is so immediate and the service is so important. So we're going to, again, put more funding proposals into our budget, enough so that every school district can hire mental health professionals. But like I said before, we also have to ensure that there are people for them to hire. So there's, it's a lot, but then there are things that we can do that don't cost money, right? There are things like support kids, listen to kids, make sure that they belong in our schools, make sure they can be their true selves. Don't implement policies that discriminate against kids. Let them be kids and let them be themselves.
We also hear a lot at the start of a school year about, quote unquote, parents' rights and parental involvement. And it feels like a public service announcement that we have to do at the start of every school year that says parents and community members can already be involved. There are already pathways toward knowing what's going on in your school district before you hear something and want to show up at a school board meeting and complain about it. School districts continue to be very open to the idea that parents and community members want to learn more and perhaps do more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many ways parents can play a greater role in supporting their child's education, and also just the children in the community, even if they don't have kids in schools. Some simple things like communicating with teachers. Teachers love that. They want you to attend parent-teacher conferences. They want you to go to school events and open houses. Work with the teacher. They're your partner in this, in your kids' education. Communicate with them. The teachers, again, they welcome this. They want to know if something is going on so that they could support your child and give them the support that they need, or help support your family, right, to work through challenges. I mean, there's so many places, like yesterday when we were at South Division in Milwaukee Public Schools, they have a family resource center where family members can go in and, maybe there's things, like for food insecurity or, a housing assistance. I mean, there's so many things that the schools provide to connect families, but also support your public school by, just supporting it, right? Get involved. Attend board meetings, attend school meetings and fundraisers. Don't just go to a meeting if you're mad, right? I mean, these things are happening all the time, these meetings, and there's all kinds of events happening, volunteering in the classroom, helping with fundraising, promoting your school in the community. Go on field trips with your kids and talk up your public schools. School is so important to the community, and supporting it vocally and among your neighbors and friends goes a long way. But then, sorry.
No, that's okay. And I get time to squeeze in one more thing. First, our friend Chris Hambuck-Boyle, thanking you on Facebook for all of your work. Second, there's no way that I ever get into this final topic as a question. It has to be an emotional editorial comment that I'm just going to then hand the ball to you. Okay. How do we still have food insecurity in our schools? How do we still have lunch debt? Jill? Feed the damn kids.
Yes,
just feed the kids,
right? And we can learn from other states that are doing this. I mean, there are ways to do it, and again, it's about priorities. What are our priorities, right? And it doesn't cost that much money. And I've always been, you've heard that thing, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Mm-hmm. Why are we not investing in kids in the front end? Right? Feed them, get them the medical need, mental health needs, whatever they need.
This is
on the
not
front end, so that you don't have to pay for it tenfold.
It's not difficult. It's
on
not
the back end.
difficult. I know. Dr. Jill Underly, thank you so much for helping us kick off the new school year. Safe travels.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Todd Allbaugh coming up next. You're up north. And there we go. Right on time. All right, Jill, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep, travel safe. We'll see you.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Todd Allbaugh now comes to the stage being his desk.
I made sure I had an alarm. I woke up at 3:30 this morning, and all I could do is think about I know, and all I could do was think about this place. I laid there till 4, and then I got up and I came in. And I just too much to do.
You're a busy little fella.
I'm not sure about that, but
oh man. All right. We got to plan some fun here. We've all been working too hard. All right. 10 seconds.
what?
As we mentioned last hour in our history lesson, it was on this week in 1990 that George Michael released his second solo album, Listen Without Prejudice. Little did the man know that he was setting up Todd Allbaugh for having a wonderful radio show theme every day at noon. So, Mr. Allbaugh, good morning.
A pleasant good morning, Patrick. A pleasant good morning, Greg. I did not know that today was the release date, but I have that album, and it's a great one. I bought it when it first came out. Yeah, I fell in love with the song. Yeah, our songs are very haunting. Part of it's very haunting, but part of it's very inspirational.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, that the album, he got some flack for it because everybody wanted the happy wham stuff, wake me up before you go. And he's like, he actually has a little bit more depth to him. Yeah. And you hear a lot of that raw emotion in this album. I always thought from the beginning, I've been... So look, I like my intro tune, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Crossfire. I think it's a good one. But yours is great. So many people have these great intro tunes, and that one for you, having the guts to leave your political party and go off on your own, and the lyrics to Freedom really play a role in that and set the tune for just really a killer show that you do every day at noon.
Well, you're so very kind. Thank you. I mean, it was something we thought about a lot. It's a little bit of a song for me, my life journey, I guess, a little bit as you ebb and grow and you want your freedom. Little did I know that it would end up being, Vice President Harris is one of her main themes.
Right.
But I chose it because I think it speaks to a lot of us, regardless of political party or those that might not belong to a political party at all. I think in our gut, we all just want, the freedom to live our lives and be happy. So, and it's just a cool tune. And I think it is. Michael's cool. Yeah.
It's got a good start to it, which leads me, Greg, Jane's on vacation. So, but I'm sure you can speak for her. I've never actually asked, I'm sure enough my musical ignorance here, but her opening song with the lyrics, Jane Says, is that a song that was well known by other people, not idiots like me, or not?
Stop making fun of yourself. It's not charming.
Okay. Hear that, Todd? I'm not charming.
I didn't say that either.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, the song is called Jane Says. It's by Jane's Addiction. I think it's a very well-known song, but I grew up on college rock and 102.1 rock and roll music, alternative music. So I always known that song. So when we picked that song, I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense. It's got her name in it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's a very recognizable tune, but when it comes to the song Freedom, especially Freedom 90 by George Michael, who is one of my favorite artists of all time, that intro always makes me feel good. I love that song. I could listen to it once a day and feel amazing.
And then, okay, fine. It's your song. You go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you then made it even better with, and you were doing the show for about, I think, a year before you led into this, coming out of the song with the line, "It's a great day to be a Wisconsinite. It's a great day to be in Wisconsin." That despite everything that the angst and the turmoil and the challenges and everything is reminding us, we all do these fights for a reason. It's because we love living here.
Yeah. There's so much to be happy about, and oftentimes I tend to focus on the trials and tribulations. But I think as Wisconsin, I got this map behind me there is for those watching on the stream of all of our stations. And if we travel around the state, it is a great place to live, and we're so very blessed and fortunate. Whether it's in the conservation in our state parks, our riverways, and whatnot, or whether it's our sports teams like the Brewers who are doing fantastic, or the Bucks or the Badgers, or whether it's our public educators like you just had Dr. Underly on before, our local schools, our community. I could go on and on. You guys know this, but I think it's always good to pause and reflect, as my old teacher Andy Spees used to say. Math is in life. Pause and reflect, and be thankful for all the great things in Wisconsin. But let me just say, really quickly, I know Jane's on vacation. I've been listening to Matt and Aaron. I want to just give props and a shout out to Greg, doing an outstanding job filling in as co-host for nearly a month. I mean, I hope Jane.
It's been a week and a half.
It's like 3 weeks.
No, it's not. But thank.
But I'm serious. No, I'm not. I told Luke. I said, man, he's really got this host thing down. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Okay, let's completely move. Let's geek out for a moment here. Right. You used a phrase a minute ago, and it leads to one of these very weird word nerd things. You mentioned trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
And that's one of the examples of there are some words that only get used in association with a phrase or another word. Nobody ever uses the word tribulation on its own. You talk about the trials and tribulations. Another one would be vim. Nobody uses vim unless you're talking about vim and vigor. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
wow. I didn't even vim. What is that? Is that like a
exactly
cool, hip, technology? Oh no, vim and vigor. Okay.
So I've never created this all encompassing list, but I'm putting everybody on notice now that this is one of those, the dumb things that rattles around in my head so often is I'm going to make that list of words you never hear unless it's in that particular phrase.
I love that a lot. I was listening to myself, which I don't like to do, on Labor Day. I was at the Brewer game, so I listened to the show before I went in a little bit, and I air checked myself, and I said "and whatnot" 3 times within 2 minutes. I'm like, what the heck are you doing, Todd? Why are you saying whatnot 3 times? But you don't realize it in the moment, and then you listen.
Stuff.
Yeah. Oh no, but there's definitely some phrases like that I probably should listen back to. It's one of those when you're early in your career, you really have to. You should catch up on. Absolutely. And at some point, you just kind of get out of the habit. And at some point, somebody goes, you say that. Kind of like, remember that time when that guy jumped on you for using the word across instead of across when you say across?
And now I'm
Wisconsin?
Completely self-conscious.
And now it's just in there. It just lives in there like one of Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s brainworms. It's just
one of the first times I solo hosted for Jane. I listened back and I said this phrase at the end of the day 7 times in 3 segments.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
happens to
awful.
I thought for sure the text line was going to light up at this point going, yeah, Kreitlow, here, you got this, and you do this, and you do that, but I'm sure we'll save that for another time.
You're an award-winning broadcaster, Pat Kreitlow. Come on now.
I don't know that I've ever actually won an award.
An inspiration to the young ones.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that
Buckeye News Award.
Yeah, no, I've kind of always put it in that phrase of I refuse to join a club that would have me as a member. So, Todd Allbaugh, the Todd Father, has so much more sensical stuff coming up, and he does it with Vim at noon every day across the Civic Media Radio Network. And Greg is bringing the vigor at 10 o'clock today for Matt and Aaron on Air. Guys,
thanks for the compliment, Todd.
Thank you both. You're fantastic.
Thank you all for being here. Up North News is the Wisconsin outlet for Courier, a pro-democracy news network, building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Up North.